I could ask everyone to take a seat, please. Okay, it is now 9:30, and so I resume the hearing. I'm not going to do a big formal opening or anything like that. I don't think that's going to be necessary, hopefully. But if I could ask Carol, could you please do the housekeeping announcements for us?
Good morning. There are no programmed fire alarm tests while the examination is on, so if the fire alarm does sound, could you leave by the nearest exit and go down to the end of Claremont Street and GMB building, which is just to your left, and we'll meet down there. If it does go off, just leave by the nearest exit and follow the green fire exit signs. The toilets are on that side of the corridor, so if you go out there, they're down at the back there. There's no cafe facilities, but you can get a lot of coffees and other refreshments on Gillygate, and there's a Sainsbury's round by Bootham. We've got filming going on, so if anybody has any issues with filming, if you could let me know, then I can put you in a location where you're not filmed. The password, or should I say the Wi-Fi is general, Citadel guest. So sorry, I've left my papers upstairs. Password general booth 1883, and they are on the walls there. I think that's about it. No, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Carol. I think we do have some less familiar faces around the table today, so if we can do brief introductions going around the table, starting with the Council's corner, Mr. Elvin.
I haven't forgotten my name yet, but David Elvin, Queen's Counsel for York City Council, with my colleague Matt Henderson, who's sitting behind me.
Morning everyone, Laura Bartle with the City Council, Principal Planner.
Hello everybody. Julian Ridge, Sustainable Transport Planner, City of York Council.
Good morning, Jane Healy-Brown from Arup on behalf of the Council on Greenbelt Matters.
Good morning, Russ Porter from Porter PE, supporting the Council on viability issues.
Dave Merritt, representing York Environment Forum, York and District Trades Union Council and York Labour Party.
Good morning, Andrew Morrison, York Civic Trust.
Morning, Emma Winter from Carter Jonas on behalf of L&Q Estates.
Good morning, Michael Corsia representing Fulford Parish Council.
Good morning, Ben Hunter, EFM Education Consultant.
Good morning, Andy Haynes from Bidwell's, representing LDP on viability.
Good morning, sir. Steve Johnston from Lawrence Walker Limited, again representing Langwith ID with Traffic Transport.
Good morning, sir. Mary Cook from Town Legal representing LDP.
Good morning, sir. Tim Waring from Quad representing LDP. I think we've actually jumped over Mr. Jones, who didn't introduce himself, but...
Good morning, Mr. Jones.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I can't hide, that's quite right. Simon Jones from National Highways. I'm the Regional Strategic Planning Manager for Area 12.
Good morning, Jessica Reeds from Peak Ecology, representing LDP on ecology matters.
Good morning, Joanne Kinder from Elvington Residents.
Morning, Jonathan Laverack, Chairman of Elvington Parish Council.
Morning, John Gallery, Councillor on the Elvington Parish Council.
Morning, Rose Hilton, Heslington Parish Council.
Morning, Pauline Bramley, Heslington Parish Council.
Good morning, Richard Bramley, Heslington Residents.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good morning and indeed welcome. Could I ask that everyone makes the greatest effort to ensure that their nameplate is sort of facing towards me so that I stand a fighting chance of reading them. I have to say that, yeah, I just can't see the ones at the back, so please do forgive me if I forget your name. I don't think I will, but we'll see how that goes. So, as with previous sessions, the hearing will take the form of a sort of structured discussion that I'll lead. I'll ask questions as we move through the issues that we have set out for today, but when you do want to come into the debate, if you can just sort of upend your nameplate like that. And I'll bring you into the debate at, well, when I can at an appropriate point. So today then is, well, originally at least, was scheduled solely for matter 7, that's site ST15, the land west of Elvington Lane, and that is where we shall go first. Once our debate in relation to that site has concluded, I will then later on in the day be moving on to sites ST8 and ST9, which unfortunately we didn't finish on our agenda yesterday. So let us turn then to matter 7, land west of Elvington Lane, as I say, site ST15. Yeah, so I have seen the statement of common ground, which came in, was it yesterday, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. I think it's going to help me immensely, and possibly others as well, I don't know, if you could take me through that. And I see that there is some shift on this side of the table, and if that can be explained as well once we get to that point, I'd be extremely grateful.
So thank you. I'll try and deal with this as quickly as I can, and of course detailed questions can be put to my team. Firstly, on the issue of shift in position, there have been significant detailed discussions between the City Council and the promoters and owners of site ST15, and we're very grateful. There's been very cooperative working. There have been further discussions with Mr. Jones, National Highways, and although those issues are not yet resolved, the view is that obviously discussions will need to continue, particularly with National Highways, but they are capable of resolution, and they have been factored in to the issues of deliverability in respect of ST15. What you'll find in the Statement of Common Ground is that there is significant amount of agreement, at least between ourselves and the promoters. Obviously, it doesn't bind anybody else, but you'll see there is general agreement that the site is deliverable. There are revisions proposed, and can I just take you to paragraph 15, showing a second access off Elvington Lane, a public transport link between the new A64 junction and the university, adjustment to the road alignment of the link between the A64 and the site, showing indicative access to the A64. Obviously, the details are still to be resolved with National Highways. An indicative highway link between Hull Road and Elvington Lane. It was considered that the most prudent means of dealing with the provision of a secondary school, if required, was to have an adjacent allocation should there be a need for a secondary school site. You had our evidence in phase 2 that it's too early to assess the specifics until the time of the detailed applications is made, but both in terms of viability and in terms of land, those issues are agreed. You'll see one of the areas of disagreement is that the promoters would like a slightly more specific policy, and I'll come to that in a moment. Additional ecology mitigation or enhancement on the western part of the runway is agreed in principle, and a minor adjustment to OS 10. Deliverability is agreed. There is a disagreement as to the wording of what the site will deliver. We've taken a more cautious approach than the promoters. You'll see at paragraphs 32 to 33, we're saying approximately 3,339 dwellings, and the promoters want to say a minimum, we'll come to that, and we're saying expectation is 560 within the plan period. The promoters are confident to say 1,040. On the precise numbers, I think it's a matter for you whether you think that that confidence should be reflected in an expectation. Certainly, we have tended to the cautious side in terms of delivery, and that's what goes into the housing trajectory. There's been a testing against a high-level master plan, which has been provided since the beginning of phase 2. Infrastructure is obviously required in addition to education. Highways requires a number of areas of work and contribution, significant infrastructure, including to the national network, hence the discussion with National Highways, as well as the delivery of other items such as the bus link. That, of course, contributes to sustainable transport, and you'll see from 25 that what is modelled is that about 25% of trips would terminate at the university, and that trip would be particularly suitable for sustainable modes of access. Education, I've already touched on. Viability has been worked on in detail. It is agreed between the parties that ST13 is viable, and 5 scenarios have been tested, as you'll be aware from CYC 99C. Biodiversity and biodiversity net gain is agreed. 10% can be achieved within the deliverability and viability parameters. As I've said, there are relatively few areas of disagreement between the promoters and the council. You'll see those at pages 13 to 15. The first one relates to the wording of the amount to be delivered. I simply say there's no point putting a minimum figure into a policy because it's not enforceable by the council, but we are happy to set it out as an approximate number. We'd of course be delighted if more than the minimum was achieved, but we think that's the appropriate policy wording. 34 and 35 set out the rival positions on education. We think that is appropriate wording given, as you heard from our education officer at phase 2, we simply can't say what the precise requirement will be until the application is in and determined. And clearly what we need to ensure, which we have done, is that there is sufficient headroom in the viability and in terms of available land for the provision of primary and secondary facilities should they be considered necessary. And you'll see that the policy also reflects the prospect of an off-site contribution if that's considered to be the way best to deal with that at the time of the application. LDP's drafting wants to go precise on the number of, on the provision of the schools. I've explained to you why that's not appropriate in our view, and their second paragraph really says the same as our second paragraph, but just takes rather longer to say it, which is off-site contributions if necessary, if I can be forgiven for saying that. We know that there's National Highways identifies a need to support a grade separated junction with merge and diverge lanes. It's shown in the viability assessment. Whilst that issue remains to be one to be explored further, it has been factored into considerations of deliverability. And so we've suggested strengthening the text. LDP have suggested strengthening the text, which they put at the top of page 15. We don't agree with that text, and it doesn't go to soundness, but no doubt they can explain their position on that to you. That's our position at the moment. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Alvin. Yeah, just to make it clear to everyone, what I'm wanting to do, first of all, as I say, is to explore with the council and the site promoters this statement of common ground, what's agreed in it and what's disagreed. It just occurs to me that on the face of it, that might seem like, we're getting straight down into lots of detailed things as though the site's a fait accompli. I know that there are some around the table that think that the site shouldn't be in the plan at all as a matter of principle. So I want to come to that afterwards so that I've got clarity on precisely what's being proposed and why and the evidence behind that, and then to sort of open up the debate more fundamentally. I know it's kind of perhaps counterintuitive to do it that way round, but it's just that, as I say, I need to understand precisely what is being proposed, because things have changed and shifted a little as the examinations progressed. So, I don't know, Ms Cook, if that might be a good point at which you could come in and tell me a little bit about what's changed and where you stand on things.
I'm very happy to do that, sir, and I'd like to do this by reference, if I may, to the Statement of Common Ground, but also that document refers quite a bit to our Matter 7 representations and to the appendices in that statement. So do tell me if I'm going into too much detail as far as you're concerned. I also just note that there are a couple of references in the Statement of Common Ground which aren't quite right. So let me just help you with the references first, because you may find yourself in a dark room in months to come, and it might be quite frustrating to have the wrong references. So I'm just going to take you first of all to paragraph 13 of the Statement of Common Ground, because that refers to a small area of land, an additional area of 2.2 hectares, which it is proposed to add to OS 10. And it says both areas, there are two small areas, both are shown on the attached plan, and there isn't actually an attached plan. But I'm going to take you, sir, to Appendix 16 of my matter statement, where you will find a plan from Peak Ecology. It actually comes twice. It comes in Appendix 14 and 16, but I think it's just easier for you if you go to Appendix 16, and it's literally the penultimate appendix.
If you would bear with me one moment.
I'm sorry, I'm working on actually a paper copy, the luxury of a paper copy.
This document in the library? Yeah.
Yes, this document is in the library, so it's in the Matter 7. If you're on the council's website and you look at the Matter 7 list, it's numbered 8. So if you get into that electronically, and I invite you to whiz your way virtually to the very end of it, the very last document in that is Appendix 17, and I want to take you to the back of Appendix 16.
Yeah, if you'll bear with me
one moment.
Absolutely. I have the document, and I possibly have, had the page, but it's suddenly disappeared from my screen.
I think it's page 116 of 120. I'm going to ask Mr. Waring to give me the electronic references as we go along in an effort to help everybody.
Yeah, I have seen this before. My laptop isn't entirely playing ball currently. Yeah, right, it is. Yeah, so I have an aerial.
Well, I've actually got, I mean, if it helps you, sir, I happen to have 2 of these, so I'm very happy to hand you up
Yes,
a working...
I'm something of a magpie at examinations, and I do like to collect bits of paper, so you'll probably never see that again, Miss Cook.
That's fine. No problem.
Thank you. Thanks.
So you will see there ST15 numbered 1. To the west of ST15, and including with the numbers 2, 6 and 7, washed over in that hatching, red hatching, is the extent of OS10. If you look to the bottom, the southwest corner, you'll see a little triangular slither. That's the 2.2 hectares in the southwest corner that is proposed to be added. If you go to the northwest corner, you will see there's a slight indentation, and again there's a small triangular slither which will be added in the final policies map should you indicate that you find this allocation sound, which will sort of square off or straighten off OS10 in that area.
Essentially, it fills the whole of that red line, doesn't it, on the western side?
Yes. And can I just also draw your attention, whilst we're here, we might as well deal with a number of points. So, Area 5 is not part of OS10, nor is it intended to be, I think, part of OS10, nor is it part of ST15, nor is it intended to be part of the ST15 allocation. It is, however, intended to be an enhanced mitigation area, and that's the area that we describe as to the west of the airfield, which is currently in the sink, hard surfaced, and the proposal is to remove that hard surface and retain it and enhance it. To the west of areas 5 and areas 6 is the Tillmeyer SSSI, and part of the mitigation is directed at that. So I just want to sort of orientate you, and area 8, again just for completeness, is both the secondary school and the playing fields that would serve that secondary school in the event that the secondary school is needed. I say that because area 5, I think, is in excess of 5 hectares, whereas you will notice, sir, that the area that you are being invited to allocate for a future secondary school, if needed, is 3.6 hectares. You said area 5 rather than area 8. Sorry, I meant area 8. Sorry. In my old age, I developed a slight dyslexia with numbers. I didn't have this problem when I was young. But again, Mr. Waring will have to watch out for me on that one. So I meant area 8.
If I could just draw attention to the fact, if you look at paragraph 31 of the Statement of Common Ground, Appendix 16 is common ground between ourselves and the Council. Ourselves and LTP,
yes.
Sorry.
Indeed. And the other thing I just think it would be useful to draw to everyone's attention while we've got this plan open, sir, is this point. You're looking here at what's described as option 1, LDP option, and that is showing the access road up to the grade separated junction, on the edge, as it were, of the 140 hectares of OS10 that in the documentation we rely on for the purposes of mitigation. So There's another version of this in Appendix 14, which is the council's option, which is what they were originally anticipating, where they had the access road cutting into, as it were, OS 10. Now, I know it might seem on the face of it, sir, that it's cutting into OS 10 on this map, but the exercise that has been undertaken by Peak Ecology is to say, although OS 10 in its extent is 190 hectares, actually we don't need 190 hectares. We need 140 hectares if the road is in the position that we, the promoters of ST15, think it is appropriate to be in. So while I got the plan open, I just explained that, which is why you will see in terms of the detail that OS 10 on the face of it seems larger than we need. So there's a bit of give, shall we say, in there. So that's one piece of context, but to come back to your sort of basic question to us, which is, I think, why have you changed your position? As the council have explained, there's been continuous discussion and work, and one of the key things for us is that in terms of the policy and the, in particular, the road issues, there's now an acceptance that an eastern access is necessary, and there is an acceptance that circa 1,000 homes could be served off that eastern access, which has had a critical effect on the overall viability. So I would single that out as being a very important matter so far as we are concerned. And I think it, again, at the risk of giving you a little bit too much detail, but I think it would just help your overall understanding, sir. I'm going to this time invite you to go into the appendices to Appendix 6, please, this time. Appendix 6 of my matter statement. Mr. Waring, Appendix 6, please. Page number. 66. Thank you very much. I feel like we should be playing bingo. I'm anticipating that doesn't look great on the screen, sir. And again, I can offer you up some more if it's helpful to you. Sorry, I'm making myself very unpopular now with my own highway witness. So figure 1, sir, is the phasing plan. And this is effectively explaining what's proposed in terms of improvements to Elvington Lane and up at the Grimston Bar Junction. And I'm not going to invite you to get involved in the detail of it, but suffice to say that the general scheme is that with that first 1,000 homes, one ends up with improvements to Elvington Lane, and you'll see in particular that there's quite a sharp bend which is removed and replaced with a roundabout. This is where the blue goes into yellow on that northeast side of, as it were, of this plan. And then you can see some proposed improvements to Grimston Bar. Those are done in 2 stages. And again, I don't think you need to get too involved in the detail of the various stages, but depicted here, again, is the access to the new phase 2, as it were, of the whole scheme, opens up the grade-separated junction onto the A64, and also provides along Common Lane a pedestrian and cycle link between us and ultimately the university and Heslington to the north. And there's just one, and the intention, sir, is that that Common Lane cycle access should be in as part of phase 1, should be in at the outset. So actually this, insofar as this plan says Common Lane cycle access brackets phase 2, I invite you to delete the word 2 and substitute the word 1, because it's intended that that link should be in at the outset, in the same way as it is intended that the park and ride bus extension also goes in at the outset.
Can I, Ms Cook, keep this
yes,
and
you
write
can write
on it?
on it? Of course you can, yes. Yes, and if everything I give you I don't expect to get back, sir.
A sensible precaution.
So I've given you both figure 1, and I've also given you, I think I've given you the another plan in relation to the Grimston Bar. Or have I given you the grade separated junction one?
The latter.
The latter. So
I haven't been given anything. Can you just give us?
Okay, so
neither have the rest
all
of
of
us.
this
So
is
could we just have the page number, please?
This is at the grade separated junction is at Appendix 8.
It's electronic page 72 of the 120.
So, as you can see from these plans, they've all been drawn up by Lawrence Walker Limited, acting on behalf of the promoters of ST15. And the principle, sir, of a grade separated junction is agreed. Obviously the detailed design would follow any allocation and inform a hybrid planning application, which is what the promoters would anticipate in a world where the site was allocated. And unsurprisingly, at this stage, there's more detail to be done, but as I say, the principle, as it were, is agreed. So these are, again, all part and parcel of the detailed work that has gone on to inform both the allocation and also, sir, the viability exercise. In terms of education, can I just quickly deal with this issue, because again there is a very large measure of agreement, and the promoters of ST15 have had the benefit of education specialists. And if you look at, this is EFM, and Appendix 11, 12, and 13 are all concerned with education.
It's electronic page 88, start for Appendix 11.
And again, there's a lot of detail in here, and I don't think you need to descend into all of that detail today. The simple point is that the work that has been done indicates a 2-form entry primary school will be required and a 3-form entry primary school will be required. And it's those two items of infrastructure that have been costed. And it is, as far as the policy is concerned, the promoters are suggesting that in the interests of soundness, given the evidence-based work that the promoters have done, knowing that as the promoters do, that those schools are required, that detail should be in the policy. Whereas the council's preference is simply to say primary school without spelling out one's a 2-form and one's a 3-form. And that's really the difference between us. It doesn't make any difference to the overall viability exercise because, as I say, we factored those in on both sides. There's another point of difference which is about the way the policy is worded, and this relates, sir, to, and I'm going to take you to Appendix 9, if I may, which is, thank you. I'm taking you to Appendix 9 because it's the policies map with some material that has been added to it. The purpose of taking you to this is just to show you ST15 and the juxtaposition between ST15, the grade-separated junction. Sorry, if you haven't got there, please say so.
Yeah, if you'd...
I'm sorry.
If you wouldn't mind bearing in mind that I'm operating off of Planning Inspectorate issued kit, and it is therefore slower than yours, I would be very grateful. Yeah, I think the issue is the sheer number of drawings, hence, it's slower.
If you have got a paper copy, sir, of the...
I do have, though, yeah, so... Yeah, I'm looking at page 74 of 120, the PDF number, and it's showing me the policies map south.
Yes.
Is that the right thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Super. So the point of taking you to this is just to remind you, and everyone in the room really, about the juxtaposition between ST15 and the university as is, as well as the university as proposed to be expanded, at least so far as the City Council are concerned. And the Airfield Business Park to the south. Again, sir, a facility which is proposed to be expanded. There's an allocated employment to be provided on that site. Because one of the points that we are making is that there should be a recognition that others, in particular those two allocations, will benefit from pedestrian, cycle, public transport links and services that are provided as part of ST15. And so one of the points we make in our representations is that there should be credit given, as it were. So let's take, for example, the improvements to Grimston Bar as an example of this. It's not just going to be the ST15 traffic going around the Grimston Bar. There'll be some traffic from an expanded university, some traffic from an expanded airfield. So all we're looking for is some sort of recognition that appropriate credits should be given to us in a world where we forward fund and do all that work. Same point would apply in relation to the public transport route which we are promoting between ST15 and the university.
Yeah, I understand the general point, which I think put crudely is this, that you are being required to enable your proposed development to do some stuff that other people might benefit from, and you want some credit for that. What I'm less clear about, though, is what you mean by credit.
Well, it's a matter of wording in the policy, sir. So, again, in the Statement of Common Ground, in the areas of disagreement, this is something which is flagged up, and in our in our matter statement, we have an appendix. Sorry. Our Appendix 5, where we have a form of words.
Page 57 onwards.
So there's an additional paragraph to paragraph 3.64. We've suggested an additional paragraph in red.
If you bear with me again a moment, my apologies for this. Right, sorry, that was 63 and 65, wasn't it?
3.64.
Okay, I have that.
So that's in the explanatory text. And if you actually go to the policy itself, SS13, Roman numeral 11,
In the actual plan?
In the actual policy. So it's just a couple of, sorry sir, no, it's a couple of pages. I'm still in my matter statement.
Yeah, I feared you might be. I'm having a bit of a nightmare scrolling through this because it's so very slow.
It's going to be page 57, I think, electronically.
Okay, I have that.
And just to make your life more complicated, there are two Roman numeral 11s here. And I'm meaning to direct you to the second one. So something's gone wrong with it should be 12, shouldn't it? Yeah. So do you have something, red underlined text, the transport and highways impacts of the site should be assessed individually and cumulatively with sites ST7, ST8, ST9, ST14, ST27, which is the University of York, ST36. We should have included ST26 as well, sir, because that's the airfield. And what we then say is, where necessary, proportionate mitigation will be required commensurate with the impact of each scheme. You may not think that that wording is quite right, but that is our attempt to ensure that proportionate contributions and credits
that the burden is shared.
Yes, exactly. That's it in a nutshell. When the plan was submitted, it required ST15. It also required the university to demonstrate, as it were, synergies with each other. So we're, if you like, just taking it, or seeking to take it one step further in terms of soundness. But these are well-trodden principles. So in terms of the differences, really it comes down to some drafting, as we've just discussed, some drafting vis-a-vis the
apologies, just to dwell on, forgive me, Ms Cook, just to dwell on this detail for one moment. This question of proportionate mitigation is the wording that you've used. Are we talking about financial contributions?
We might be talking about financial contributions. We might be talking more about credits in a world where we go first. We put the infrastructure in at our expense, and we're looking for some credit for that.
The effect of that, Ms Cook, we must be talking about financial contributions, which are regulated by Reg 122 anyway.
Again, so we're getting into matters of detail, but in the context of a planning application, if I was to come first and I was to put in the grade separated junction and the physical infrastructure required to link to provide the bus link to the university, which would then enable potentially the university to make use of that road, thus avoiding, for example, Grimston Bar and being able to come down to the A64, we would expect there to be some credits given in a 106 obligation for that.
If it's not, sorry, I know we are dwelling on a matter of minutiae and detail, but it's quite important for me to understand how you would see this working. Now, when you say to me money, I understand what that is. When you say to me credits that aren't money, I'm not quite sure what that might be.
So supposing you had a development which had 4 or 5 items of infrastructure required, and the developer forward funded 4 of those, the council might promise to get a proportionate contribution from the university when the university's application came forward, and then to give the developer a credit for that in the context of the 106 obligation. So in other words, instead of me handing over, doing all of the road work and handing over the full costs of secondary school places, I might be given a credit for my secondary school places to offset of the fact that I'm overpaying on my road. This is the sort of thing that goes on in a detailed 106 obligation all the time, as I've discovered in my town legal world. That's what I mean by credit, sir. That's how councils help developers make things viable.
So it's kind of, then, is it like a pooling of Section 106 contributions, the difference here being that you fill the pool to begin with and then others add later as their developments come forward?
And it requires the council, because I can't go to the university, it requires the council then to pick up that contribution from the university. And it's also how highway authorities deal with situations where you've
Ms.
got...
Cook, I really do think we're getting into matters of development management here, and we're getting bogged down in issues which will have to be resolved with all the sites impacting on the infrastructure at a later stage. This is implementation, it's not plan policy with respect. You know, we could spend all day arguing about this, and I really don't think this is the place to do it.
I think that's rather my fault rather than Ms. Cook's, Mr. Irwin. But you'll understand, in my shoes, I need to understand how they propose this thing would work. I think I understand what they're proposing now. Now that I do, I am going to move on, which I know you'll be grateful for.
Certainly.
Is this an area for further exploration between the two parties, or is it an area that's been exhausted and we are where we are?
Well, what we're proposing, as you'll see from our version of the policy, which is attached to the Statement of Common Ground, is the same wording as we propose for ST7, which is, of course, the issue of proportionate contribution has got to be looked at, and a number of the other sites which may bear on the increase in traffic at the relevant junctions, which may require adjustment, will need to make contributions. That is a matter to secure in due course. But I don't push back at all from the concept there has to be a cumulative assessment and a proportionate contribution. The mechanism for that is a matter for planning applications. And it's not an unusual issue where you've got a series of developments coming forward over a planned period which cumulatively impact on major infrastructure.
So if I can add on to Mr. Elvin's comment there, just to also make clear that for the purposes of our plan making, we have also tested through the viability work that these infrastructure requirements that Ms. Cook refers to are indeed deliverable on that site.
I don't wish to say any more so in relation to that topic, but that's a very useful, as I see it, indication from Mr. Elvin that he agrees with the principle. And obviously we will continue, as far as I'm concerned, yes, we continue to talk to each other until, well, until the adoption of this plan.
And I made the same point yesterday in relation to ST7 as well, which has the same wording we're proposing for here too.
Yeah. I don't think I need to address you on the difference between at least or minimum numbers. I'm happy for you to exercise your judgment in all of that. The only other thing I would just say, standing back, is that obviously we started off this plan being very concerned about viability. We've worked hard with the council to secure the concessions that we wanted in relation to the second access, and I hope it gives you comfort, sir, that in terms of the overall viability, the promoter is now content that in this, the viability exercise demonstrates some headroom, and that we're convinced that this scheme is now deliverable.
And that means, does it, from your perspective, Ms. Cook, that I no longer need to trouble my mind with notions of broad locations?
Correct. You may also recall, sir, that in the beginning the policy called for a 5-year delay on development because of biodiversity. And again, that's another area that has been agreed. So we're now looking to do OS 10 in the preceding planting season. So again, I think I'm happy to leave it there without going into all the wheres and wherefores.
I see you've been indicated for quite a while, Mr. Corsi. Did you have? Is it about this, or is it about the? Because I say in terms of the fundamental principles, which I know you'll be wanting to speak about. I wanted to park those until I've got a clear picture of what's currently proposed. But I think I know what you're going to say. Let me see.
Thank you, sir. No, I'm not going to go to merits at this point. I'm taking it that we'll deal with that later in the day. I want to raise a procedural point, sir, which
I thought you would.
We obviously, this statement of common ground came out. I'm not certain. I checked at 5 o'clock last night. It wasn't there. I checked at about 9 o'clock last night, and I saw it there, sir. So there's been absolutely no opportunity for any party to actually, other than the council and the LDP, to actually know what we are dealing with here, sir. And I would stress to you, this is not just a statement of common ground agreeing facts, sir. This is a major alteration being proposed to you by the council, because at the end of the day, this is a examination into the submitted plan and the evidence which was submitted with that plan, which, frankly, we have not known about, and we've come here today. Today is a day which is set to present evidence to you. The hearings obviously are a very important part of the process, and we are put in a position whereby I haven't prepared any evidence to deal with these matters. I doubt whether any other party has. And we are at a major procedural disadvantage. I really can't, I don't know how to deal with that. So I'd also stress, sir, that we're also faced, since we put in hearing statements, with a whole raft of new evidence. We have now, the council have submitted the peak, have now, I think, included the peak ecology evidence within their, basically, it's their evidence on the SNCI, so that is new. And so I do note today, I note that it now forms an appendix to the Statement of Common Ground. I don't know whether that's been changed from the evidence originally in LDP or not. So we have the EXCYC 89, the Sustainable Transport Study. So that's about 80 pages of new evidence, which has come in since hearing statements were prepared. And indeed, sir, we have the new Porter Viability Study, which has come in since hearing statements were submitted. So you have no opportunity for consider any representations, written representations of any other party on that evidence. That's complex technical evidence, which is not, frankly, is not of a type which can be dealt with satisfactorily in a hearing like this. It's not like a Section 78 inquiry, so where there's a witness which somebody could take through page by page showing disagreements. So this is not that sort of forum. This is, you need those written representations in front of you to deal with it, so that you know the views of all the parties before the hearings, and you do not have that. And so if you go, sir, to, obviously, this is meant to be the evidence, you're meant to be assessing the evidence on which this plan is based. That's the word in the MPPF. And so the council should not have submitted until they were thought the plan was ready for examination. And so I just again refer you to paragraph 318 of the PIN's note on hearings, where it makes quite clear that council should not be submitting evidence retrospectively to justify proposals already arrived at, which is exactly what we have in this whole raft of new evidence. Mr. Elvin's doing a really cracking job for the council, sir, trying to plug holes. But that is not the purpose of submissions, sir. We are being put at a major procedural disadvantage today, sir.
Yeah, look, a few points on that. First of all, yeah, obviously I know what the PPF says. I also know what the Planning Inspectorate guidance says. And certainly, yes, I do tend to get some of the more difficult examinations, and it's not uncommon, frankly, not ideal, but not uncommon either, to have evidence being generated as the examination progresses, especially an examination like this, where it has been going on for some years. Indeed, in some instances, it's essential that new evidence is produced because there's either an evidential shortcoming somewhere or because the examination goes on for so long that some evidence falls out of date and needs to be refreshed in order to be considered robust. I do, though, take your point in relation to some things, Mr. Corsier, and Mr. Griffiths and I talked about this last week, and we are going to be asking the council to have a look at this, and in relation to some of the things that have come in late, with a view to allowing written representations to follow. In relation to today specifically, though, I'm clearly aware that the statement of common ground has come very late. One has been able to see, though, since the statements were submitted, what these two sides, I can't call them the main parties because it's not an inquiry, but if it were, they would be the main parties, that the local authority and the site promoter, and what they were both saying at that time. So I would say, what we've heard from Ms. Cook, by and large, isn't a surprise. What is the surprise is that we have these now narrowed down areas of disagreement and agreement between those two. So yeah, I mean, I will give some further thought to that. But just so everyone's clear, I tend to take quite a cautious approach on matters like this, because at the end of the day, it's not in anybody's interest, frankly, to have difficulties, stickiness, or challenges of any kind on procedural points like this. And part of my role is to ensure that the procedure is fair, and that, as I say, that is what we will be doing. Precisely how and when, I need to work that out, and I need to talk to Mr. Griffiths about it as well. Does that help, Mr. Corsier?
So that does help, but I would remind you the central role which hearings have in these matters. And so the fact that you will now be hearing the hearing on this very important site without having any written representations on major issues of the major new points of evidence, that goes to how far fair this actual hearing is. And so the fact that we can put in representations later, which the council then will have a further right of response, I don't think it really goes really to the nub of what I'm saying. I've done many hearings before I retired, sir, examinations before I retired, sir. The general pattern is where the council wants to present new evidence, they do so, it is publicised, there is a period of representation, and then there are hearings, sir. I have never experienced a hearing where large amounts of new evidence is coming in after the hearing statements have been received, sir. That's
I can only say,
new
Mr. Corsier, that in that respect you've been very fortunate thus far. That has not, sadly, been my experience. I'm satisfied that we can run the hearing today on the basis of where we are. As I say, Mr. Griffiths and I will need to give some consideration as to how we deal with any fairness point going forward, particularly in relation to allowing further written comment on material, not just in relation to today, but other days as well.
Do you think I might say something, sir?
Yeah.
Because Mr. Courcier's submissions are disingenuous. Mr. Courcier has made these points about the local plan system. He clearly doesn't understand it with respect, because as you say, this is and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, and I've said it in my note, this is an iterative process, and as a matter of law, as well as policy, plans evolve during the examination process, and you've said as much. But more importantly, the evidence hasn't changed. What we've done is narrow down the disputes. And if Mr. Courcier had troubled to read the quad hearing statement, all the detail which is the subject of agreement is set out, and indeed Ms. Cook took you to some of it, in the quad hearing statements. We have complied with the timetables set for the hearing statements. We flagged up the areas that were subject to agreement in our hearing statement. All we have done is dotted the I's and crossed the T's of the areas of agreement and disagreement. The issues have not changed, and the evidence has not changed. The evidence is in the hearing statements. And so with respect to Mr. Courcier, he has simply not read the material that's available to him, because that provides the information he needs to comment upon. So I'm putting this rather firmly because we've had this from him before. But I say very clearly there is no unfairness here. The material has been there as long as it's been available to the rest of us in the form of the hearing statements.
And sir, can I just endorse that submission? Because there's nothing new in the Statement of Common Ground. It's all based on my Matter 7 representations and all the appendices, save in respect of one point, and that was a point that I fancy Mr. Courcier anticipated, because in his representations, comments were made along the line questioning whether the promoters were in control of the land. And I'll concede there's one thing in that Statement of Common Ground which is not in the representation, and that's a plan which very clearly demonstrates that the promoters are in control of all of the land required for ST15. That's the only new thing.
Okay, thank you. I have heard enough on that, and I'm going to move on. Yeah, I wondered if the council wanted to say anything else about the areas of disagreement.
I don't think so. I think they're fairly straightforward, and I think Ms. Cook's made her response, and you have it set out in a form which I think allows you to clearly see what they are, so far as we're concerned. And if you've got anything specific arising out of that, then of course we'll answer it, but I think it's there for you to make your own decision.
Yeah, fine. I mean, they are relatively sort of narrow, if I can put it this way, detailed matters. I think Ms. Cook basically said, yeah, I'm not going to go through them. You can go home and make your own mind up. I think you're telling me the same, Mr. Elvin. Very good. Mr. Jones. Morning. I was wondering if you could tell me where National Highways now stands.
It's a very large question you've asked me there, sir, isn't it? I'll try and come and
Yes, I'm good at doing that.
Very broad indeed. I'll try and define those terms a little bit more. As you know from our own statement of common ground with the council, we reference ST15 in that, and quite clearly it states that there is still ongoing work between all of those parties, and that they are levels of detail which we expect to come out of further discussions, pre-application, during the application process. That's post, obviously, adoption of this plan, should that be what PINS put forward as their recommendation. There are a number of issues in the Statement of Common Ground which I've received this morning. That is the first time that I've seen that. They're not issues particularly which Secretary of State for Transport will want to kind of comment on through National Highways. There are a few matters in there which implicate National Highways by inference and by some mention of infrastructure and the SRN, but again, this document obviously is signed between the parties who are named on the back of that and not by National Highways. I've not seen that or been a party to it. In principle, the discussions this morning have already highlighted the decision from National Highways a number of years ago, over a decade now, the in-principle decision, that is, to provide a grade-separated junction on the A64 by which the development can access the site. And that's on the basis, of course, that a safe and compliant design can be reached by the developer and then funded thereafter. So that's making it exceptionally clear that National Highways and Department of Transport are not looking to be co-funding this new grade-separated junction. That rests entirely with the developer. The modelling work so far received from the development team, and that done with the in conjunction with the council, does require further work, obviously, but again, this is, in my opinion, the level of detail which is not required for your deliberations, sir, at the EIP.
Yeah, I mean, you said there, safe and compliant junction can be provided and funded. Yeah, I think it's right to say that I don't need to know the details of that junction, but I need to be reasonably, yes, thank you. You know, I need to be satisfied that there's a reasonable prospect that such a junction could be provided, and it would help me to know what you would say about that if you were sitting here at this table.
Well, sir, I think that the developer has undertaken work in the past to look at the design of a junction, a grade-separated junction. We have supported the council back in 2020 in providing them with a band or a range of costings which could support such a junction. And the developer has, in conjunction with the council, transferred that and some of those costings into their IDP, which in effect is the appendix at the end of the EX document, CUIC 79. And they've listed there the costings which themselves, the council's team at WSP, I believe it was, have substantiated, gone through and looked to deliver. And if those indeed are the costings and the developer's happy to fund those and has looked at the site in terms of the number of dwellings to be delivered and says it is deliverable and we can create this junction at these kind of costs and we will absorb that cost, then that's absolutely, from our perspective, absolutely fine.
So it sounds like you're convinced and content. Is that a fair characterisation?
We are content, sir, that the developer can undertake the work, and as long as they have the money there to deliver the junction, that a junction can be delivered. the viability work that sits behind this with the council and the developer. National Highways has not been a party to that and wouldn't normally look to be party to that either, as it's not a junction that we would be delivering on behalf of the developer.
Does the council, I'm looking, I don't know if it's one for you, Mr. Ridge, but does the council have anything to add to that?
I think the only thing that I would add is that the grade separated junction costs, as they've been calculated, are based on a QS exercise by WSP, which came up with a very similar number to the number that LDP were also putting forward for the junction. So we're satisfied that that is a robust cost.
Other than that, as Mr. Jones has pointed out, we have our statement of common ground with National Highways, and as Mr. Jones has said, we're satisfied too that sufficient work has been done to show that it's capable of being delivered, and that the rest, as Mr. Jones has indicated, is a matter for detailed design in due course.
Yeah, although earlier than I'd normally take it, I think I'm going to take my morning adjournment now. And then when we come back, I'm going to sort of, having now kind of understood entirely what's being proposed and the detail of all the evidence behind it, and the narrowing down of the areas of agreement and disagreement between the council and the site promoter, I'm now going to take a step all the way back to look